helpful, but don't feel like you have to, write everything. If you have any questions as we are going along, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try and address them as we go, or if it's kind of a bigger question, we will also have Q&A time at the end. There's also going to be a very short survey at the end of this presentation. Please, 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 please take some time to fill out that survey. It is so helpful to us. I actually ran this training last month and we got some really good feedback. And so there were a couple of changes made based on what folks found useful. So please definitely take a time to do that. We will remind folks about that as well. All right, with that, Tiffany, let's get started. So welcome to our Fundraising Fridays. I want to also just shout out our amazing supporters at the Resilience Initiative. They make this work possible. We would not be here without their support. So today we're going to be talking about corporate and institutional giving. And so I'm going to just move us right ahead to the next slide. So before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to the Progressive Multiplier team. These are the amazing folks who make all of PM's programming possible. And I know that there is at least one person from PM's team who is my co-pilot for this, Tiffany. Tiffany, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Maria. My name is Tiffany Leckett. I use she or they pronouns. I'm the managing director of program here. I'm sure I have presented to one or two of you, at least in the past. Glad to have you all here and looking forward to what we learned together.
Amazing. Is there anybody else? Let's just see really quick. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Okay, I don't see anybody else from the PM team. And Tiffany is helping run all of kind of the back end of this, but also is a brilliant, brilliant fundraiser. And we'll also be jumping in to add more color and context. So let's go to the next slide. For folks who are not familiar, I just really quickly want to highlight PM's vision and mission. So our vision is a progressive movement with the scale and power to achieve justice, realize democracy, and restore the environment. Really very simple goals, nothing too major. But we believe that money multiplied is change amplified. And we want to build a progressive movement that is able to achieve sustainability and scalability. What that means is helping organizations figure out how to improve their fundraising programs, how to build independent revenue generation, and how to really thrive in this moment where so much of what we believe in and what we care for is under attack. So if we can go to the next slide. Really quickly want to remind folks that in addition to these monthly Friday Fundraising Friday trainings, our partnership with Resilience Initiative also offers up to 5 free hours of one-on-one fundraising coaching with our team of fundraising experts. So, maybe you need assistance creating a communications calendar, or you want to know the best practices for setting up a major donor program, or you just want to kind of bounce some ideas off of someone who has expertise in this field. We have just the people for you. They are amazing, brilliant practitioners. And if you are interested in signing up for this, please shoot an email to Michelle Mengel. You can see her email on the slide, and Tiffany is just going to paste that in the chat. So you can shoot a note to Michelle and we'll get you set up. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this is the last bit of housekeeping before we dive into our content. So I've introduced you to the PM crew, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background on me as your trainer. So my name is Maria Chijov. I am a queer immigrant organizer based in Chicago. I originally connected with PM as a grantee, so I was sitting in your seat when I was on staff at Ultraviolet. Now I'm an independent contractor and I get to stay a close friend of PM. So I'm based in Chicago, and my organizing is really grounded in mobilizing people at scale to take collective action for liberation. And that could mean organizing people to show up in the streets, or that could mean organizing people to open up their pocketbooks. And at the end of the day, I think it's really important that we all kind of include our whys, why we do this work. And my why is that I want to build a world where my wife and kids feel safe, valued, and are allowed to live their fullest and most joyful life. So that's a little bit about me. All right, let's get into the content. So, what are we doing today? We've got a couple of learning objectives. Tiffany, can you go to the next slide, please? So we're going to be talking about corporate and institutional fundraising. And I would say about 90% of what we talk about today is going to apply if you're talking to a corporate sponsor or if you're talking to a foundation. We'll talk a little bit about some of the distinction, but there will be a lot of overlap. So we're going to talk about where to look for corporate and institutional prospects. Like, where do we find these people? Where do we find people who are eager to support our work? We're also going to develop a rubric for qualifying corporate and institutional prospects. Not every single corporation or foundation out there is for you. How do we identify the ones that are a good match, that are a good partner? We're also going to understand how corporate giving differs from foundation granting. Many of us might be more familiar with the foundation side. There is a lot of overlap if you're interested in looking at corporate, but there's also some unique kind of quirks. And then we're also going to talk about tracking prospects. There's sort of the like finding the people, but then once we found them and start conversations with them, how do we actually make sure we keep all our ducks in a row? With that, Tiffany, can we go to the next slide? So before we do all that, part of the goal of these conversations is to really build community with other fundraisers. So we're going to do a little breakout right now with just a small group to get to know each other. In your breakout, you're going to be with 3 or 4 other people. You just want to go around, share your name and pronouns, your organization, tell us a little bit, or tell your group a little bit about your experience with corporate or institutional giving, and then share a question or a couple questions that you are coming in with. After the breakout, we'll come back and we'll try and surface some of those questions, and then we'll try to weave them into the conversation for the rest of our time together. No promises that we'll be able to get to every single one, but we will try to include as many as we can. So with that, Tiffany, do you want to open up the breakout groups? And you'll have 5 minutes in these groups. So definitely, move quickly. Cool, cool. Everybody's in their groups. For folks to share in the chat, what are some questions that came up? What are questions that you're bringing into the space? Or what are questions that someone else in the group had that you're like, oh yeah, I want to know that? How do I build a relationship with a corporate donor? Love that question. We're going to touch a little bit on that and can definitely get in more into that in the Q&A. Thank you, Christina, for breaking the ice. Would love other folks to jump in with any questions that you have.
Can keep this going.
Mhm.
I work for a coalition group of nonprofits in sustainable seafood. So our value add to nonprofits is a pretty easy thing to weave together, but showing value add for corporate donors is a much harder thing to bridge. So I think for us, like very nonprofity nonprofits, like how we like build that bridge to corporate dollars is what I'm curious about.
I love that. We're going to talk a little bit about motivations and what motivates different partners, and I think that can help us get into that question. Oh, and there's someone else from Sustainable Seafood. I love it. Making connections in the chat. Oh, we have a lot of seafood folks. Amazing. I love it. Okay, just looking at the chat, wanting to learn how other organizations are dealing with connecting corporate partners in such a restrictive social and political climate, and how nonprofits are connecting with each other to break into the corporate world. I love that question. Learning, and another question about how do we speak fundraising jargon and how do we speak the language of funders? Love that. Amazing. If there are other questions that you are coming up with right now that you're like, oh, building off of that, this is actually making me curious about this. Or if you want to add a question in the chat, please feel free to do that. Tiffany's going to be tracking us. But in the interest of time, I do want to get rolling. So let's go to our next slide. So we're going to get into talking about corporate giving and institutional giving and how we kind of think about those two. I sort of, the framework that came into my head is they're the same, but they're also kind of different. So let's go to the next slide. And I mentioned that we are, we're going to get into talking about corporations, which means that we're going to talk about capitalism. And this is not going to be a lecture about the ills of capitalism. I'm sure many of us can spend a lot of time talking about that. But I do think it's really important for us to name at the top of this that capitalism does create exploitative conditions. And as people who are working towards liberation, we're constantly facing the contradictions of that. Tiffany said a great thing to me of that there is no clean money in capitalism. Corporations exploit people in many different ways. And at the same time, as people who are choosing to exist within this capitalist system, we need to navigate those contradictions and we need to grapple with them. And that's not always easy. And our answers may differ based on the moment, based on our constituencies, based on what we do. And what's important is that we spend that time thinking about them and grappling with them. So if we go into the next slide, I mentioned this already, but we're going to talk about motivations. So we all have motivations for our actions, right? There's a reason why you do the thing that you do. And understanding both our own motivations and also the motivations of our partners is really important for helping us achieve our goals. So I kind of laid out 3 types of actors. We've got corporate partners, institutional funders, and then us, nonprofits. And I created sort of some very general outlines of like some possible characteristics. But it's also really important that your mileage not only may, but will vary. So it's really important to do your own research when you are going into these conversations with any kind of funder. Be really clear about why are they talking to us? What do they want from us? What do we want from them? Beyond just, their dollars. So again, these are going to be some really general kind of top lines. But when we look at our corporate partners, a lot of them see social justice adjacent work, which could include anything from environmental justice to pay equity to gender justice work, as complementary. Many of them do, not all of them, to be clear. But corporations that we would actually be talking to here see that social justice work as complementary to their business model in some way, and to their bottom line of making a profit. So as we know, corporations are accountable to their shareholders and to their boards, and those boards hold them accountable for profit making. So while for many of them, there could be a commitment to their community, there could be a commitment to their employees, there is also a commitment to that profit and to marketing, which they a lot of times will put social justice work in that bucket. We also, someone highlighted this as a great question of like, how do we actually think about navigating these relationships in a moment where the work that we do, that I think all of us here would not find controversial, can be seen as controversial in this political climate. And corporations are actually scared of that controversy, can be scared of that controversy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The other kind of part of this trifecta is the institutional partners. So I would say these are our most diverse players. So I think a lot of folks are coming in with questions of like, how do I talk to foundations? What should I tell them? The unfortunate answer to that is it depends. Because, you know, foundations can really vary in how they interact with nonprofits. Some really act more like movement allies, while others can really act more like corporate partners and be really kind of conservative and really focused on a specific set of things. That being said, the most important thing that I always try and keep in mind with foundations is that any foundation, no matter what their relationship to the movement, is governed by their own set of priorities and goals. So they have a strategic plan that they are working against. They have goals that they are trying to meet. And so part of what we are trying to figure out is how do we align our work with their goals? And finally, there's us, the nonprofit. And usually, you know, we think we know ourselves. But it's really helpful when you are going into these conversations and starting to think about any sort of partnership to really be clear about, okay, aside from just like, we need this money because it funds our work, why specifically this partner? What is valuable about this relationship? Is it helping you to build out existing work? Is it helping you to launch a new program? Is it actually opening up a whole new area that you are trying to enter? Now, ahead of this call, we actually got a really great question that I want to pull out, which is, what is the institutional, what is it that institutional donors want to hear from nonprofits right now? And it's an open-ended question, but this person said, I feel like there is an invisible agenda that's keeping donors from moving forward. Great question. I think we heard something similar in the chat where folks were saying, what's the jargon? Like, what are the secret words that I need to say to unlock the money? And I'm actually going to turn this over to the group. I'd love to hear from Tiffany, from other folks in the room, as you're talking to funders, what feels like it's really connecting right now? Before we do that, I'll just name two things. I think as a general rule, funders want to hear how your work makes sense in the context of their priorities. So it's always useful to kind of understand those priorities, and they shouldn't be a secret. You should be able to look them up. You can ask, and then you want to talk about your work in that context. And then I think the other thing that's true in this moment in particular is that I think a lot of funders are trying to make sense of this as much as we all are. And I think for different funders, that's meant different things. For some funders, it's meant that they've actually moved a lot more money and have opened up their reserves and have committed to granting larger amounts. For other organizations, for other funders, that's meant that they've sort of backed off and been really more nervous and have kind of locked up funding. But it is also important when you are in these conversations to really raise up how you are meeting this moment and how your work is meeting this moment. So there's sort of a sweet spot between your work, their priorities, and meeting the moment that I think really makes for a great pitch, I guess is the, but I would love to open it up for folks to share their experiences. And Tiffany, maybe do you want to kick us off? And then if other folks can also jump in afterwards.
Sure. Thanks, Maria. I think you're absolutely right that some funders are still reeling and sort of trying to chart their course forward, um, and wanting to be smart about making sure that they can support the movement in ways that make sense without accidentally attracting the wrong kind of attention. It's really, really difficult. Um, but I think one thing that we can always lean into in the moments of uncertainty is our impact. And that's the thing that I think that I'm leaning on the most in this moment is what are we achieving? What have we achieved? And when you've got undeniable impact, you just have to trust that they're gonna see the value in that, and continue to just like beat your drum on it until the right people show up for you. But I'm really eager to hear what messages other folks are hearing out in the world about what folks are looking for right now.
Yeah, I would love for folks to share as you feel comfortable. What are you hearing? Or maybe what are some conversations that you've had that have been interesting or kind of like, oh, this was kind of a interesting tidbit that I heard from a funding partner.
I can share. My name is Deborah Koltoff. I work for Ignite, and our work is about raising up young women as civic and political leaders. So it's a complex area right now to be fundraising because a lot of the funders I've spoken with are nervous, and they're nervous about the exposure to recrimination by supporting our mission because our mission focuses on women. And so it's a really stressful time to be fundraising, I'm sure as it is for everyone on this call. But what I hear from funders is what I'm hearing from the majority of funders is that they still want to do the work. They still see the need for the work. They just want to know how to do it without increasing their exposure.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely one of the things I've seen is a lot of funders get even more restrictive about what they believe C3s to be able to do, even if it's kind of beyond the legal scope of a C3, or more restrictive than the legal scope. So absolutely. I'm seeing Christina shared some great links from LinkedIn of funders having this conversation. LinkedIn is a really great resource. Following like funders on there can help you get into like, okay, what are they talking about? What are they sharing? What are they posting? Um, and then, yeah, a great point about how funders in the progressive space don't want to fund duplicate efforts across organizations. I think this is really a really important piece for us as we're thinking about who are our partners, so that when we're coming to funders, if we're coming with others who are doing similar work. And foundations seem to be increasingly collaborative, at least in the environmental climate space, and are going through intermediaries and re-granting for sure. I think those are really great points. I want to just, again, in the interest of, I feel like we could spend a bunch of time on this. We could spend a bunch of time on all of this. I saw some folks who are interested in that anti-capitalist lecture. I would love to do that. Maybe a topic for another time. But if we can go to the next slide, we're just going to talk a little bit about some definitions. So we're going to start off with a B Corp. I would love for folks to put in the chat the letter of the answer that you think is the definition of a B Corp. Is it a corporation committed to supporting bees? B, a mid-level company. C, a company seeking positive impact for stakeholders and beyond shareholders. Or D, a really boring company. C, yep, love it. I was really hoping someone would be like, yeah, a company that supports bees. I love that. Yeah. That should be more of a thing. All right, Tiffany, let's reveal our answer. I think we all know it. C. Yes. So if we can just go to the next slide, we're going to talk about this. The bees absolutely need help, especially with Trump administration going after the bees. So a B Corp is a business that strives to balance profit with purpose. aiming to create a positive impact for all stakeholders, which could include employees, community members, the environment, customers, not just shareholders. Now, what's important to remember about that is it's still a corporation. There are still shareholders. So there are still people who are thinking about the profit. They are also, however, thinking about their impact on the environment, their impact on the community. So another thing that's important to remember about B Corps is that it's a licensed entity. They are licensed by B Lab. So you could come across corporations that actually abide by these values and hold these values, but are not B Corps because it's a process that takes time. It takes money. It takes a lot of things. So this is sort of an orientation that you might see with some corporate partners. And I think as folks in the social justice movement, B Corps are really great potential partners for us. The other thing to think about is CSR, or corporate social responsibility. These are practices and policies undertaken by corporations that are intended to have a positive influence on the world. Now, when many of us in the movement read this, we're like, okay, well, what's positive? What does that actually mean? And so the key idea behind CSR is for corporations to pursue pro-social objectives in addition to maximizing profits. For folks who are in the environmental movement, you might recognize CSR as the home of many organizations or many corporations' environmental efforts. At the same time, I come from a gender justice background, so a lot of work for corporations that actually support abortion rights was also grounded in their CSR teams. And so I think that's important because when you are going into conversation with a CSR person at a corporation, they're thinking about kind of all of these quote unquote pro-social objectives. And you might be saying, okay, like we're an environmental organization. We're coming to talk to you about environmental work. And they're coming telling you about, how they're feeding hungry children, which is also really important. But for them, it kind of all lives under one umbrella, whereas for us, it can be multiple different issues. So if we can go to the next slide, I feel like we've got some really great thoughts in the room, and I want to open this up for conversation. So for folks who have done, especially some of the corporate fundraising or have connected with corporate partners, but also institutional partners, how have you found them? Where have you been looking? Where have you looked? Or if you're thinking about going down this path, where are you thinking about looking? I think an important question we get asked a lot is like, how do we actually find these people who want to fund our work? How do we connect with them? So let's start at the very top of that and talk about where are folks finding potential partners or thinking about looking for potential partners. Or are you like, Maria, that's what we're here for. That is what we want to hear from you. Okay, Aaron's saying conferences. Yeah, ADPN, Engage for Good. Those are some great examples.
It's too much for me to type, but one of the things we did recently was we did kind of a giveaway of some of our merch and a ticket to an event, but we asked people to tag their favorite local businesses or organizations in our area, and if there was so many, we got so many from them. So that was something that we did.
I love that. I love that idea. You can source it from your folks. I'm also seeing Deborah suggesting networking through our board. Absolutely. Board members are a great source. Other organizations, impact reports. And yes, absolutely. I think that is a great idea, especially for organizations that are in a similar space. Also, our dear friend Google, very, very helpful here. These are all excellent suggestions. So if we can go to the next slide. So yes, where do we find our partners? I think we've touched on a bunch of these. Obvious subject alignment, businesses and institutions. If you are an environmental organization and there is a solar business in your community, reach out to them. connect with them. And I really love what Karina was saying about, having your supporters tag those businesses so that they are seeing that connection, and maybe they'll even reach out to you. Also think about large employers in your area, both corporations that are headquartered where your organization is based, or local branches of national companies. I think Deborah mentioned working your network, especially your board, but also if you have some major donors who have some connections, it's a great way to bring them in and say, hey, we noticed that you also are on the board of this company. Would you be willing to make an introduction for us? Asking close allies or looking at their impact reports is a great idea. The other thing is I have some Google alerts set up for major giving around some of the areas that I care about. And, you can kind of fiddle with this a little bit, but you can set it up so that you're both seeing institutional gifts as well as corporate gifts that can send some alerts your way. Okay, so we've talked about where we're finding these partners. Can we go to the next slide and talk about some important considerations as we are thinking about reaching out to them and starting this conversation? So, two important considerations that I will offer. The first is that in both corporations and for institutional funders, as we can all imagine, as our organizations have different departments, they also have different departments. And at the end of the day, the money that we get can come from a wide variety of parts of the business. So if you are dealing with a corporate partner, you might be talking to the CSR person, or you might be talking to their marketing head, or their partnerships head, or their sales head, or their HR head. And what's important in those conversations is to think about what is the motivation of this person. So a marketing person might be really interested in how many eyeballs are going to get on their logo on your banner if they give you the sponsorship. Whereas an HR person might be more interested in how many people are going to come out and volunteer at an event. Motivations are incredibly important when we're thinking about why, what is it that this person is looking for, and how can we make sure that we are providing that? Similarly, on the institutional side, this has happened to me where I was working with an environmental organization. We were talking to a foundation and we said, hey, we're an environmental organization. You have this great environmental portfolio. We think we're a great fit. And it actually turned out that based on kind of some of their criteria, they also had a movement building portfolio, and our organization was a much better fit for their movement building portfolio. And so that's another thing to think about. And this is where it's really helpful to kind of get a sense of looking at grantee reports, looking at impact reports of other organizations to try and understand, okay, where are like-minded groups funded from? Who should I be reaching out to? Where do we make sense in this world of this organization? The second thing that I'll name is the difference between a grant and a sponsorship. This is something that's a little bit more relevant with the corporate folks, but could also be true for institutional funders. So sponsorship in the corporate world is generally going to be a marketing play. You are looking to raise money for an event, a company buys the silver level sponsorship package, and they get, their logo on your banner, and maybe they could put some swag into a gift bag. And they are interested in kind of the ROI on that. So how many people visited the link that we provided, how many people saw our banner, etc. A grant, on the other hand, is a donation to your work. The donor may still want marketing deliverables, but it's less directly connected, and there might be other things that they are looking for. Again, as we're having those conversations, it's something that we can suss out, like what are they actually interested in? And then in terms of the forms of support, like how we can think about, especially with our corporate partners, what that could look like. We've talked about a number of these. There's sponsorships, corporate foundation grants, contributions. But the two things that I really want to highlight is the first is workplace giving and employee matching. We are not going to have time to go deep on that, but Tiffany is going to share a great resource that folks can look at after this call on how you can tap into workplace giving. The second is I also encourage folks to think about not just direct cash donations, but also products, space, in-kind donations. Depending on the context, these can sometimes actually be more valuable than cash. So one example that I'll give is I'm on the board of an organization that was dealing with some like fairly hairy legal stuff. And we had a pro bono law firm come in and offer their services. Honestly, to us, that was like way more valuable than straight dollars, because if we had approached them and said, hey, we have all this money, which we would have needed a lot more money than our budget in order to hire them, we probably wouldn't have been able to get into their caseload. But because we went through their pro bono department, they were actually able to help us resolve the legal issues in a way that was really, really helpful. So again, so that is really fantastic. Okay, so let's go to the next slide and talk about what makes a good match. And we had some really good questions about like, how do we actually like start this conversation, especially with corporate partners? How do we find them, but how do we literally get in the door? And Tiffany's going to share actually a really great resource in the chat, which is a template presentation that you can adapt for conversations with corporate and institutional funders. So this can help you communicate your ideas and what you are looking for. That being said, before you do that, you obviously have to get in the door. You have to get the meeting. I think of two things that are really important as part of how we get into that door. The first is alignment. Does this partnership make sense to you and to others? If I were to call up a community member who works with our organization and say, hey, we're partnering with XYZ widget company, would they say, oh yeah, that totally tracks? Or would they say, what? Why? That doesn't make any sense to me. If you are an environmental organization, you are not calling up Mobile and Shell and being like, hey, let's work together. That does not make sense. So that's the first piece. And sometimes that alignment is really, it's going to go a little bit deeper than just like, oh, we work on the same issue. It might be this organization is invested in our community, and we are as well, and that's what makes the partnership. But really, we need to be able to explain that alignment to our community and to the corporation. Why does this make sense? The second is we need to understand the motivation. What is it that this corporation is looking for, or this institution? What do they want? Why does it make sense for them to spend their money on this? In a way, it's really, you're like figuring out how to sell the product of your work. So those are the two things. And, you know, I think in terms of how we literally communicate this, I would think about Deborah's point about using your board, looking on LinkedIn. It's always great to look at those like connections, like who do I know who knows someone in CSR at this corporation? That is a really great way to get in the door. Or similarly with a foundation. For some larger corporations and some foundations, they'll also have a portal where you can reach out to them directly, either their CSR portal or their, their open call portal. It is an option. It doesn't always exist. But I think the bottom line here is there's a little bit of research that we can do that can help us get our foot in the door. Then
I'd like to just,
oh yes, please, Tiffany, go ahead.
Thanks, Maria. I just wanted to add something because you mentioned like we're not going to Shell and Mobile if you're working in an environmental organization. And some of you may recall that after like Deepwater, is that what it was called? Deepwater Horizon?
Mm-hmm.
These companies came out with like, we're investing in whatever, all kinds of environmental cleanup and things like that. So the question for you isn't necessarily, are they granting in this arena? They might be granting in an arena that's close to what you're doing. The question then becomes, is it a philosophical alignment? And are we comfortable as an organization offering this company a chance to technically like whitewash their reputation by working with you? And then the question, as Maria said at the top, that I believe that there are no clean dollars in a capitalist system. All money is dirty money. The question then becomes like, is this the kind of money that we're willing to accept to advance our mission? And some of you may say, yeah, it's worth it. They want to shovel so much money at us that we could do big, good things with it. And some of you, your gift policy is going to say, we're not invested in letting companies whitewash themselves through our work. And there are valid, acceptable reasons on either side of the scale. It's really about measuring your own tolerance for that kind of arrangement.
Love that, Tiffany. Thank you so much. And Tiffany is previewing in a little bit. We're actually going to talk about those gift policies and how we can write those. And actually, that also, I think, segues really nicely into once we get in the door, what does it actually look like to have these conversations? The two things that I would say is, one, over communicating, especially when we're working with corporate partners. I know someone mentioned jargon. I think we look at foundations or corporations and we're like, oh my God, what do these words mean? But also they look at us and they're like, what do their words mean? So sometimes we can find ourselves in a situation where we are just talking past each other. And that leads to some really awkward interactions or confusion, or just creates more work for you down the line. So I really encourage us to be really clear, really explicit. Check your presentations, check your kind of materials for that jargon. I often find it helpful to have my mother-in-law is like my go-to person who I'm like, hey, does this make sense to you? As like a regular person. So it's always helpful to have someone who's like not in the work look at these things and be like, oh yeah, okay, I get what you're trying to say, or you've lost me. The other thing is transparency. And I'm seeing Andrew giving a really good example how we will not take corporate funding for restricted projects, but if they agree to make them unrestricted, we will take that money. That is something that is a great policy to have for your organization. For this organization, obviously your mileage may vary, but it is also something that's really important to communicate out so that when you are coming into those conversations, the corporation knows, okay, cool. We know that we're talking about an unrestricted gift. Great. We're all on the same page. Everything's clear. The other things that I'll just name really quickly here in our common pitfalls, a couple of these we've already talked about, but one thing to think about is kind of the process of right sizing that ask. A lot of times I've worked with folks who are like, okay, corporations have bajillions of dollars, so therefore they can give us bajillions of dollars. And while that is true that they have a lot of money, the folks that you're dealing with have a budget, and that budget is significantly smaller than the like overall earnings of whatever company you're talking about. So really right sizing the ask, looking at, have they done this work before? What's been the size of that ask? What makes sense? And then the other piece is not doing your due diligence. This is where, and we'll get into this more in terms of our gift acceptance policies, but this is where we both think about, what is this corporation doing? What is its impact in the world? But also, did their CEO just say that Trump's deportation policies are great? Probably not a great partner if you are working with immigrants with immigrant communities to have a donor who is, who their CEO is saying horrible things about our target communities, our core communities. So that sort of due diligence is always really helpful. If we go to our next slide, so we are going to do a little bit of deep brainstorming together. And so this is an opportunity for us to come together and talk to each other about how we are finding partners. And I have some guiding questions here, and we'll put those in the chat as well. About what are we looking to do? How are we looking to find these partners? So you're going to be in a group of about 5 people. We're going to spend the first 4 minutes. You're going to just have a notepad or, a computer Word doc, and you're going to be jotting down ideas. You can use these questions as your focus, or you can just jot down like, oh, based on what I've seen in the chat, these are the things that I want to think about. Then you're going to share out your ideas with the group. You're going to spend about 7 minutes going around. Everybody's going to share, this is where I'm thinking about going. This is what I'm thinking about doing. And then we're going to spend the last 4 minutes doing a second round of brainstorming to really refine our ideas based on what we've heard. So you might be saying, oh, Andrew was in my group and Andrew had a really great idea and I'm going to add it to my list. You might be hearing, oh, Christina is working on this cool project. Maybe there's a partnership potential there. Or you might say, you know what, actually, I want to refine this idea based on some of the other feedback that I've gotten from folks in my group. So we're basically doing first round of brainstorming, then kind of a share out and group workshopping, and then a second round of brainstorming. So in a moment, Tiffany will break us out, but I am going to paste these questions in the chat. So if folks want to, again, you'll see this in the chat, so you can take these with you into your breakout groups, and we'll prompt you at the 4-minute mark and so on. So Tiffany, please take it away.
Maria, some folks are jumping off. I'm going to reorganize the rooms because now we're in groups of two. Now we've got 2 groups worth of people.
Okay.
So I'm going to close them and restart.
Actually, wait, Tiffany, you might be able to just, oh, you've already closed them. I think you can actually just move people into rooms. But I think now that it's closing.
Oopsies. Oh. Hey, it brought us back.
Yes, sorry, we had a couple folks jump, so we ended up with like some groups that had like 2 people and some groups that had 5 people. So apologies, technical difficulties. We will resort you in a second.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, y'all.
No problem. Hi, folks. We had minor technical difficulties. We are restarting the rooms so that everyone is now in a group of 5 and not some groups of 2 and some groups of 5. So please rejoin the group that you have been added to. Awesome. Tiffany, are you good on queuing folks at the 4-minute? Awesome. We are also behind, which I expected. So I will adjust.
I think we're going to be okay. We still have 30 minutes.
Yeah, because I think
Mm.
tracking prospects is going to be pretty quick, and then I want to spend a good amount of time on that question of like, what are your red lines? And I feel like that's already come up. I feel like that'll be helpful for folks, and then we can wrap up fairly quickly.
Do you want me to cut the sharing out to 5 minutes instead of 7?
Ooh, yeah, let's do that. I think that'll buy us a little bit of time. That'll be good.
I pressed my breakout button too quickly.
Oh, no worries.
Everybody's just a few seconds behind you. No worries at all.
Yeah. Welcome back. Welcome back. We've got like 9 seconds, 6 seconds until folks are all back. Amazing. I hope that was helpful. I know there were already some connections that were being made in the chat before the breakouts, but hopefully this gave you a chance to talk to someone a little bit more about some of the ideas that you have. I know that as a fundraiser, sometimes, especially if you're the only one at your organization, it can be a little lonely. So hopefully this was a useful exercise. So let's go to our next slide. I want to be mindful of time. So we are going to talk about tracking prospects. So we are super excited. We've got these really great folks that we are reaching out to. Some of them are even responding, and maybe even multiple people on our team are going to be talking to them. But if we are not tracking those conversations, things fall through the cracks. And especially in a moment where I think all of us are probably feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed, or like we need fewer things on our plate, the idea of introducing any sort of tracking system can feel really overwhelming. That being said, hopefully this is a framework that can be useful for folks to make this feel a little bit more right-sized for your organization. So again, if you do not currently have a system set up for tracking, especially, if you maybe have something that works for institutional funders and you're like, can I use this for corporate relationships? Like, how does that work? The answer is yes. You can probably use whatever it is that you have already. And literally, it can look like anything from a spreadsheet to a full-on CRM. And Tiffany is going to share a template in the chat. Thank you, Tiffany. That is an example of what you can use. Again, a spreadsheet is totally fine. If you have a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, those can be really great too. But what I think is more important than what tool you're using, even though, we can have a long conversation, another topic for another one of these conversations about tools. The thing that is really important is that there is alignment between all the people who are touching any kind of relationships about what they're updating, how frequently they're updating your tracking system, and with what information. So it's possible that you're going to be sitting there and you're like, you know what? We need to record all of these things and it'll be the perfect system. And then no one does it. And your perfect system sits in a Google document and doesn't actually get used. So this is really a place where sitting down and having a conversation with your team is really helpful. And really trying to get a sense of, okay, what is the level of alignment that we can get to, that we can get people to really truly commit to, and then checking in on that periodically and saying, okay, are we actually doing the thing that we said we were going to do? And then also thinking about how frequently you're doing it. Ideally, you are updating your tracking document quickly and consistently. And one thing that you can always look into is automation. Always our friend. If you have a full-on CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, there are pre-built tools. You can do just a quick Google search for this. You can create automation that way. But if you are on Team Spreadsheet, which is also really great. I see Deborah is on Team Spreadsheet. I personally am also a big fan of spreadsheets. As long as they're frequently updated and like well named, that's really important. If you are on Team Spreadsheet, there are still automation tools like Zapier that you can look into that can help you not have to go through the process of manually tagging, updating, whatever. Again, that can help you save a little bit of time. So that's my very quick word on tracking. Again, whole other conversation, but I wanted to add it because I think it is particularly important if we are starting out pursuing, for example, corporate relationships, to make sure that our tagging system aligns. So let's go to our next slide. And Tiffany actually previewed this a little bit earlier. So now we're going to talk about our gift acceptance policies. And we're going to start off by talking about some like red lines for our organizations. So what are already either existing red lines or what you think might be a red line for your organization, where you're like, absolutely not, we will not take money from insert red line. And then also, what are some yellow lines where you're like, this feels kind of fuzzy and I feel like we'd have to like have a conversation about it.
I've got a couple of examples to model so people can think for a second. So before coming to Progressive Multiplier, I worked at an immigrants' rights organization. But we were also like staunchly pro-union because of the ways that unions support the middle class, particularly immigrant workers. And so we had a policy that we would not accept money from companies that were actively engaged in a labor dispute or that had a poor track record with labor. That was really, really important to us. Another thing was like vendors. We didn't work with vendors that were supporting the for-profit prison system that is incarcerating immigrants. So it's really about like the values of your organization on top of the mission. But it was really important to us to really stand on the side of labor, though labor was not our primary issue, because we just felt like that's a red line for us. And we don't, again, we didn't want anybody whitewashing their reputation with us, particularly because if they have labor disputes and they think, oh, we could support this immigrant organization and people will think we're the good guys. We didn't want to implicitly co-sign that kind of behavior.
Absolutely. I love that, Tiffany. Any other, and this could be existing red lines, or it could be what you think might be a red line.
I guess I can share. I was doing some prospect research on an individual and found out they do great things. However, I realized that they're like associated with like the Fox kind of like network, right? And I was like, ooh, let me just highlight this. Is this something that we want to be associated with? So that was something that was like a flag for me that I brought up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Jessica. And I think especially in this moment, people who are legitimizing the right-wing ecosystem, definitely something to think about. Yeah. Any other things, other examples?
My organization is primarily a research organization. We produce research, and one of the things that we run into sometimes with mostly corporate, sometimes foundation funding, is kind of mismatched expectations about how involved the funder is going to be in the research product. And sometimes we get into red lines or yellow lines with partners where we want them to acknowledge upfront certain guidelines in how we're going to control the research product. They're going to have an opportunity to review something and make comments. We're not bound by their comments. Be free to redirect them or shop it around to other people for comments. And some funders want to push on that, and we have to say no.
Absolutely. And I think that's where that transparency piece that we talked about really comes in. Andrew, I know you said like at the front end, really being clear about those things. And also, sometimes that means letting go of the relationship when you're like, this is not a match. I will also name, so I worked at MoveOn at one point, and just like to give sort of the like most extreme side of this. So MoveOn has a policy of not accepting any corporate donations. And up until, I want to say 2016, didn't take any foundation funding either. And there was a lot of conversation about why and how and whatnot. If folks may or may not remember this, but there was at one point MoveOn took money from George Soros, very little money, very indirectly. And then the right sort of went down that rabbit hole. And so basically coming out of that, a policy was developed that we were only taking small dollars. And so that's another, like, that's sort of, you know, as you go through this process, that could be a place where you land because you say, you know what, for us, the work that we do is incompatible with corporate partners. That is an option. And I'm seeing, yeah. Oh, Deborah has a really great point about how we have to be careful of mission drift with organizations who want to guide our work to some degree. Absolutely. This, you know, we go back to this on foundation side where foundations have their own goals and the things that they're trying to do, and they might see your organization as a vehicle for moving those goals, but you might not. And you might say, well, no, that's not what we think makes sense based on our work. These are really great points. I'm gonna let's move to the next slide because I want to talk a little bit about some of the things, and we've touched on a lot of yeah, and yes, absolutely. It's all billionaire dark money at the end of the day. And I think that, you know, this is, yeah, and this is where it gets into this question of how do we deal with the contradictions of capitalism? Especially, you know, depending on how you feel about whether or not billionaires should exist. But if you feel like billionaires should not exist, then like, how do we feel about taking their money if we don't think that they should be here? And I think the other thing to name here is also like our personal beliefs versus our organizational values is another thing that's important to grapple with here. So in thinking about designing your gift policy, this is where your gift policy is where you get to grapple with some of these things. So a couple of questions that I would start off conversations around gift policies with. And I really encourage you to take these back to your team and like have this discussion. The first is, how do we think about the harms that corporations are causing? Tiffany had a really great example of, you know, labor alignment and union busting as an example of harms. Obviously, there are many harms that corporations cause. So it's really important to kind of suss out how you think about these things. And I do want to also name that for some organizations, it's going to mean taking money from certain corporations that other organizations might not take money from. And I think as long as we are being honest with ourselves, as long as we are getting input from our community, that calculus could be different for different organizations. The other piece of this is how, so, you know, there's kind of the bad stuff we know, right? We know that ExxonMobil is polluting the planet. We know that this law firm is engaged in union busting, all these things that we know. But how do we actually handle things that we don't know? If there's breaking news about an individual at the top of the organization or about the actions of this organization. We live in a world where, you know, there seems to be breaking news every 20 minutes. And sometimes that will involve some of our partners. Again, better to be prepared ahead of time than being in the moment where you're like, oh shit, this thing just happened. I have to like figure out what we're doing. The other thing to think about is, how do we actually communicate these red and yellow line policies out? I think Andrew named like having a conversation on the front end with a funder about like, this is what you can and cannot do in this partnership. Does that work for you? Yes or no? Yes, and I'm seeing Jasmine put in a quote from a friend. It's not fundraising, it's evil super PAC funding deviation, which I think is like, yeah, I mean, that's another way to think about it is like, you know, if they're not giving us money, who are they giving money to? And how do we think about that? I think these are, and like, you know, these are not kind of the warm and fuzzy things to think about. These feel very like, it can feel Machiavellian sometimes, but I think, again, capitalism is filled with contradictions, and that is what we are trying to navigate. But also part of communicating these red and yellow lines out publicly, part of it is about the funder and like the person you're working with. Part of it is also about your community, because oftentimes like our communities are going to hold us accountable, and they're going to see that we're taking money from this organization, and they're going to say, hey, did you know that they're, you know, busting unions? And like, how do you feel about that? Are you pro union busting? So really being upfront with those policies, I think, is really important. And then the other thing to think about is if we take this money, does it close doors to us? And are we okay with that? That doesn't always happen, but there could be, you know, relationships that will change if you take certain money. And we need to be kind of aware of that on the front end. So just very quickly, I want to go through like a quick sample process for developing a gift policy. I think the two big things that I will highlight here is, you know, having a conversation internally, drafting a document, all of that pretty straightforward. But the thing that I think is really important is to get input from partners. This could include internal input, obviously, but also from all of your stakeholders. Think about like, who are our community members? Who are the people that we serve? Who are our allies? And just getting their input on looking at a document and saying, yep, this makes sense. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then the other piece that I'll highlight is, you know, usually a gift policy is something that needs to be affirmed by your executive team and your board. And then once that happens, how are you going to actually share this out publicly? A lot of organizations will just have this on their website as like, here is our gift acceptance policy. It's something that you can point people to if they have a question. It's something that people can very easily find. And again, it speaks to that transparency of being very clear about what you can and can't do. If we go to the next slide, so we are getting close to the end of our time, and I just want to really quickly highlight one thing. So Tiffany is going to share a really great toolkit that is going to help reinforce a lot of what we've talked about and also go more in depth on a lot of things. So encourage folks to take a look at that. But the one thing, you know, I really think about building any sort of program, whether it's institutional or corporate funding or membership or anything, as a ladder. We are climbing up the ladder. So if you are just starting out, if you are at a place where you're like, we do not have a gift acceptance policy, or we have a gift acceptance policy that is incredibly vague, and if you read it, you're like, I don't actually understand what this means. A good place to start is on the create a policy rung, and going through that process. But then the other thing that I'll highlight as we're moving up the ladder, it's really important to periodically reevaluate our policies because the world changes. The things that we are concerned about, I think Jessica named the like Fox News relationship. That is something that I think feels really different today than it probably felt 10 years ago. I mean, Fox News was still bad, but I think how an organization would respond to that is different today. I know for a lot of organizations, in the wake of the racial justice uprising in 2020, folks revisited their gift policies because the way that we collectively saw the world had shifted. And so it was really important for us to revisit our policies, make sure that they still made sense in this new context. So with that, let us do really quickly, go through our recap, take a look at our learning goals, and then I would love to open the floor up for questions. So Tiffany, let's go to the next slide. So our learning objectives, we wanted to learn and talk about where we were going to look for corporate and institutional prospects. And we did that in our breakout groups. We talked about it as a big group. We wanted to develop a rubric for qualifying corporate and institutional prospects. That is where we think about our gift policy. That is where we think about who do we take money from? Who do we not take money from? Who is our lowest hanging fruit? We talked about that. That's also something that's particularly in the toolkit, really something that we dig into more. We wanted to talk about how corporate giving differs from foundation granting. That's where we talked about those motivations and what drives different folks. And then we also wanted to talk about tools for tracking prospects. We've had that we shared that in the chat. And we also talked about, you know, spreadsheets versus CRMs and the need to just, whatever you're using, make sure it's updated. So now before we, well, I would love for folks to like share their questions, but before we wrap, I would love to hear just like, what are two things that you are taking away from today? It could be, I have a new idea for a prospect. It could be, I find this tool really helpful. It could be that I didn't think about this in such way, but we would love to hear what you're taking away. And also Tiffany very kindly shared the link for feedback. We would absolutely love to hear your feedback. What worked? What didn't work? what would you like to have seen more of? What other trainings do you want from us? This would be really helpful as we continue to develop this programming. But yes, so folks can fill out the survey and share 2 things that they've learned or 2 things that they're taking away from the training. And then with that, I'd love to open the floor up for questions.
Feel free to drop your 2 learnings into the chat if that's easier for you.
And I'll just pull out a question that came up earlier that might be that I'd love to actually hear from what folks are seeing, which is how are we thinking about connecting with partners in this restrictive political climate? And I'm curious if anyone has any like examples from their work of either, here is a thing that seemed to have worked, or on the flip side, it's also, I think sometimes it's helpful to share like, hey, this was a thing that happened to us. That, a funder had to pull out because they felt like we were controversial. It's also totally fine to share that. Tiffany, I don't know if you're seeing from some of your grantee work, any how folks are dealing with this question too.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them are like, right now they're leaning into how can we amp up our individual giving revenues because of this uncertainty and buy ourselves some time to see where corporate and foundation groups are going.
Yeah.
A couple of comments from the chat about learnings. Appreciate the time to hear what others are experiencing. Fundraising can be lonely work. It's good to connect with others. Always think about the motivation of the person when we're talking to them. I'll always do some brainstorming on how we hold ourselves accountable and how we ask our ecosystem to hold us accountable. Love that. Thank you. Love learning from peers and the example of the Excel tracking systems. Like the latter metaphor, also thinking about the multidimensional motivations of funders. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Love that.
Really like the latter and the strategies for corporate funding searches, likely very different for orgs with local versus state versus international community. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. These are such great points. I'm glad folks enjoyed the motivation piece and the ladders. And I'm also, I really am very happy that folks were able to connect with other people in this space. I have some time, I can hang out. I know we are at our time, but if folks, before you jump, if you can please grab that link, even ideally feel like it will literally take you like a couple of minutes to fill out the feedback form, but it'll be so helpful for us. So if you can just grab that before you hop off. It is in the chat. And yes, Deborah, the complexities of gift acceptance are, well, complex for lack of a better term, but also things that, I will say as someone who has dealt with the fallout of not having a well thought through gift acceptance policy and finding ourselves in hot water when we were like, oh shoot, how do we deal with this? You are saving yourself a huge headache by really having these conversations on the front end. And also, like, obviously naming, you can't anticipate all the things, right? The world is the world. So don't try to hold yourself accountable to 100% all situations are going to be covered, but really having these conversations, I think, is really helpful.
And remember that you don't have to start from zero with a gift policy. You can look at some peers' gift policies and then talk with colleagues about how broad do we want to be, how narrow do we want to be, how prescriptive do we want to be, what level of detail, and then adjust, what you're reading from colleagues and peers to suit your organization and your risk tolerance.
If anyone has any other questions or wants to talk about anything, like I said, we can hang out for a little bit. Otherwise, please fill out the form and then, yeah.